And it's showtime. We're live. Dr. Kris, how are you today?
Not too bad. Just getting through a busy Tuesday, like always. Weather's much better, so that's been nice. I think I woke up and worked out this morning in our gym back there, and actually had to put a pullover on. That was kind of nice.
Yeah, same thing here. The weather's changed a little bit. I noticed this morning a little breezy and 70 something degrees. So, not against that whatsoever.
If we could just freeze it in time for a little while, that would be what would be awesome.
Yeah. So, today's topic, I think the girls on your team were thinking because you're so sweet, we need to talk about sugar-free sweeteners and the good, the bad, the ugly, and what alternatives we might consider. So I'm going to hit the intro and we'll kick off. If you're like most folks Dr. Kris Fusterhausen works with, you're active, you want to take ownership of your health, and you want to age gracefully. The problem is there is so much conflicting information out there about health and wellness, it's tough to know who to trust. Most providers are limited by what insurance will approve, so it can seem like they're only able to help you manage your health decline with more meds. On the Dr. Kris Life Podcast, you'll learn how you can regain your confidence in your health journey. You'll learn helpful knowledge about programs, supplements, peptides, and hormones that Dr. Kris has used with thousands of patients just like you to help them crush their goals and be their best selves. So if you're ready to take charge of your health and are wanting to stay active and healthy so you can be a better parent, partner, or lover, then you're in the right place. Welcome to the Dr. Kris Podcast. Right. All the lovers are here, Dr. Kris.
Yeah, and this can be a prelude to Halloween, I guess, talking artificial sweeteners. So we're not that far away.
Yeah, so I've always been suspect. Back in the day, sweet and low was a big deal. I remember my grandmother, she was on that bandwagon, Weight Watchers, sweet and low, and that later she had Alzheimer's, and I always wondered and if that had an impact on her. I've always noticed that when I use sweet and low, or when I did the few times, that I kind of got a headache. And so I quit using it. And I've kind of felt guilty that I've shunned all of these artificial sweeteners and just went straight sugar. I'll avoid the sugar-free drinks, etc., because I just don't trust them. And then today, the topic's about this, and there's some data that's showing that there's some negative effects from these.
Actually, there's a ton, and this isn't something new, by the way. There's more and more data coming out, but we've known for a very long time that artificial sweeteners are bad for us. And we'll go down this pathway, but one of the biggest things that I tell patients all the time, like here in the part of Texas that I'm at, and maybe it is where you're at too, and more the Panhandle, is Dr. Pepper. For whatever reason, people love their Dr. Pepper. And I tell patients all the time, I'd rather you drink a real Dr. Pepper every day than to drink a diet Dr. Pepper. And I'm not picking on Dr. Pepper. I'm just talking about the aspartame that's in that. And I think one of the most important part that understand is there's so many things have it in it. And I think that's where a lot of people miss it. You chew gum, so much of the gum is flavored with aspartame. Heck, the other day I was with a physician friend, and I love Altoids. And I had bought a new version of Altoids mainly because the little tin can was smaller and it would fit in my pocket. And I was like, cool. Then I opened it up and they were little bitty Altoids. And I was like, and she goes, don't eat that. And I was like, why? And she goes, those are actually flavored with aspartame. It's a new version. The normal Altoids are not. And so for me personally, I tell everybody I used to have a Coke addiction, Diet Coke, that is. And I used to drink about 6 Diet Cokes a day back when I wasn't healthy, because many Americans have been fooled into thinking that a 0-calorie food product or a 0-calorie drink is actually okay for us. And so I drink these Diet Cokes all day thinking that they're so good for me, when we'll kind of go into why they're not so good for us. But I couldn't understand why, I couldn't lose weight, or I didn't feel as good as I wanted to. And now that I have eliminated aspartame as best I can from my diet, you're right. Like it's amazing. Like occasionally, like, oh, I don't know, I'm about to give a lecture and you got a bad taste in your mouth or something. You grab a piece of extra gum or something and you chew it, and I get that little tension headache that happens afterwards. And I'm like, damn it, aspartame. Why do I always go back to the well? Because a lot of people don't know that one of the most common side effects amongst many is some chronic nagging headaches from aspartame use.
Wow. That I just you think about when Dr. Pepper was invented, 10, 2, and 4 was on the label there. They recommended or encouraged to drink one at 10, one at 2, and one at 4. But that's when it was all natural.
Right.
And I imagine that it would add more calories onto you. But when folks are drinking them so regularly, thinking that you're doing something, you're avoiding negative effects, there's stuff in those that you're changing your body, or your body has to deal with it regardless.
Actually, the studies have actually shown, and one of the reasons I say I'd rather you drink a Dr. Pepper than a diet Dr. Pepper is a few things, and we'll go deeper as we talk. But first, a Dr. Pepper is not good for you. And if you're a reasonably intelligent person, you're going to be like, well, this is my 1 12-ounce Dr. Pepper for the day. I'm not going to have it at 10, 12, and 2. I know it's got a ton of sugar in it. I know sugar's not good for me. So I'll drink 1 and that'll be it for the day. Whereas people who drink diet drinks think they're good for me. So it does not matter how many I have a day. I can drink 140 ounces of, you already know this, but there's so many people out there, their only form of hydration is diet soda. That's all they drink. Diet soda. Like, oh my God. Like, so when I do new patient consults, and I'll come back to that thought in a second, but I always say, are you willing to give up alcohol? Are you willing to give up sodas? People are more willing to give up alcohol than they are to give up sodas most of the time. Like that can be a deal breaker. And I'll say, well, it's a deal breaker for me too. Like we're at an impasse. If you're not willing to give up something as simple as soda and you want to lose weight, then we're probably not going to be willing to do the work that comes with it. But let's go back to our brain. So the one thing about sugar, they have found that it actually somewhat has a satiety effect on us. In other words, we actually eat it, the real sugar goes into our body, it somewhat calms that craving down. Whereas the aspartame is so good. I always tell patients it's so good that the body cannot really tell a difference. But it doesn't give your body the effect it's looking for. So in a weird way, the studies actually show it increases the cravings, making you want more. But let's talk about one little fun fact about aspartame. And this is the fun fact that I found out years ago. Aspartame. So when aspartame was first approved back in the late 70s, early 80s, I think it was somewhere around 79, 80 that it was actually approved. It was very difficult to get approved. By the way, the committee member that was on there, I believe this is accurate from what I remember, my exact facts, that was on the committee, then became the first CEO of the company. But anyway, worked for the government, got it approved, then went work for the company. At above room temperature, this product actually turns into low levels of formaldehyde. Yes, the chemical that we use to embalm patients. And if you remember in the Gulf War, there was a big thing called Gulf War syndrome. And many people have theorized that Gulf War syndrome was actually aspartame, because what did they do? They took all these sodas, they stuck them in tents at 130-degree temperatures, stored them there. Then when it came time for or in warehouses, they would then bring them in, ice them down, consume them. And that was the big issue that was on the record whenever aspartame was being approved, is like, how do we make this, put it into a product, get it consumed all at the same time, keeping temperatures at room temperature or below? Because I always go back in the day when I was a kid, where did everybody store their sodas? They were on a pallet, like that little cardboard thing that they came in the garage, right? Like that's where my parents kept them. All my friends, that's where they kept them. Diet drinks became the rave, and people would just stack them in their garage where they were sitting at 110 degrees, creating formaldehyde. So it's a very, very toxic product. It causes a lot of problems. It's actually now showing that it causes insulin resistance. All the things that we're trying to fight with the health programs that we put in place that you and I talk about, insulin resistance being those first steps before diabetes. Some people theorize it has cancer causing characteristics to it. It causes our brain not to feel satiated whenever we drink them. So we drink one Diet Coke, we want another Diet Coke. It worsens our metabolism. I can't say anything good about aspartame. I actually believe, and I know this is a strong comment, and it's just my belief. I guess I'll put it out there, my disclaimer. I believe it to be a poison. I really do. I feel that strongly about aspartame being a poison. And if patients got nothing else out of this podcast, is like, hey, let me try and just eliminate aspartame out of my diet for a month. It's kind of like I tell patients with alcohol, give up alcohol for a month. See how you feel. I think you'll be surprised. Give up aspartame for a month. See how you feel. I think you'll be surprised. Then if you really feel like you need it, bring it back, and you'll realize how bad you feel when you bring it back. Like you said, have a little bit of aspartame and it gives you a headache. But going back to your original statement about Alzheimer's disease, I mean, my response to that is it damn sure didn't help. It damn sure did not help your family members, journey through dementia for sure.
Yeah, I don't know much about that chemical, but I believe it is designed to trick your brain into thinking it's sweet. And you think about, the science that went into that. That's not a natural thing. And as I get older, more and more, I'm thinking about what activities am I doing that's impacting my brain function, right? And these things are definitely in play. And the more that I can avoid them, the more that was the convincing thing for me to stop drinking alcohol, Dr. Kris, was thinking what it's doing to my brain. If I want to avoid or not get Alzheimer's, it's a evil disease. It's just awful. I was just thinking, what in my lifestyle do I need to take off the table that it's increasing my risk of having negative brain effects?
Yeah, and obviously we can't remove everything, right? There's we live in a world where there's always going to be negative environmental environments unless we go live in a hut out in Alaska in the middle of nowhere. But we can minimize these things. We can avoid things that we know are bad for us. Like years ago, we told everybody go drink 2 drinks a day. It started with wine, then it got expanded to all alcohol. Have 2 drinks a day. It's good for you. That's bullshit. We now know that alcohol is bad for us. It causes inflammation. We talk on this podcast how inflammation is the root of all chronic disease, just like I think aspartame, exerts its effects and at the end stage causes oxidative stress or inflammation, and basically works against all these things. It's like the 5 million preservatives that are in our food. I don't think anybody listening to this podcast, I probably have to twist their arm into believing that if we can if we eat something that's natural, non-synthetic, grown in the right way, cooked in the right way, that is going to be better for us than consuming these highly synthesized, highly processed different things that we all consume. I was actually just talking to a patient earlier today, and we rarely dive off into politics, but, RFK is somebody that I think we talked about it maybe on the last podcast. I've been saying how health-wise, I couldn't agree more with some of his thoughts. And I think it's really awesome that he's really the first person I've ever heard that actually, as a politician, is actually on the soapbox and like beating the drum of we've got to change the food industry in the United States. We're killing our citizens. We really are. Now, part of me wonders if most citizens want to be saved. I don't know. Cheetos taste really good, right? I'm not going to lie. I occasionally eat a few.
Right.
I do believe our body can withstand and sustain small amounts of a lot of these things. It's when that's what our major consumption is. But aspartame is a unbreakable box that I will stand on. In other words, it's no aspartame. Like if you say how much aspartame is okay, none. It's a neurotoxin. It actually hurts our brain. Like you said, too many things hurt our brains today. I think all of these things hurt our brain. You know, if I was in your office right now, there's all kinds of stuff, just like in my office. And I love the theory of like unplugging and being away from all that stuff, but it's impossible practically. But we can unplug from aspartame, or at least minimize it to the best of our abilities. You know, it's just patients don't truly understand. When you sit down and tell them, though, like, hey, this stuff turns into formaldehyde. Does that sound like something you should ingest? No, I don't really think so. It's like fasting. I've never had anyone embrace fasting, come back and tell me they felt worse. Someone eliminate aspartame out of their life, come back and tell me they feel worse. Somebody eliminate alcohol out of their life and come back and tell me they feel worse. There's certain things in health that are just tried and true. We know they work, you know, and for the most part, I always say avoiding alcohol, avoiding artificial sweeteners are two that are tried and true. Let's pivot though and talk about sucralose for a split second. Splenda. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was on, and I'm going to be full disclosure. As I always tell my patients, I tell the truth. I don't lie about what I do. I do consume some sucralose. Sucralose, you know, we were all really happy with sucralose, another synthetic artificial sweetener, until we got some studies a year or so ago that actually did show that it causes disruption in the gut. And so unfortunately, sucralose, although I believe if we're going to judge like which is, I always say it, this is a very country term, which one's worser, you know, I think that aspartame is much worser than sucralose or Splenda. But at the end of the day, both products are not good for us. So that's where, you know, like there's been a lot of pushback with aspartame. So then now like energy drinks, different products are now throwing like all of the water flavorings, you know, that you squirt into them. As far as I know, that I've seen all the major brands, those are all sucralose products now. Taste amazing. In many ways, it's so much like sugar, it's ridiculous. You know, you see Splenda, people baking with it and things like that because it's being touted as a better version of aspartame. But the problem is that it's got its own issues as well. Because again, you go back, if you disrupt the gut, you disrupt everything. So really and truly, there is a product we'll talk about in a little bit, but for the most part, all that artificial stuff, you need to try to get it out of your diet the best you can. I allow myself one drink a day that has a little bit of sucralose in it. Otherwise, I try not to do any, but I'm just self-admitting that that's one of my weaknesses is a little bit of sucralose every day.
Yeah. You know, the gut brain connection, it makes sense to why if it's disrupting the gut, it's disrupting your brain function as well.
Well, just think about serotonin. Most of our, you know, again, I don't think you have to be a doctor to have heard of SSRIs, right? Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, aka Prozac, Paxil, Zoloft, Celexa, Lexapro. Those are trying to raise serotonin levels. One of the best ways of raising serotonin levels is just fix your gut health, because 90+% of adult Americans, actually 90+% of Americans have poor gut health. And if we can work on gut health, you naturally raise serotonin in the brain through the gut brain axis. And so, again, I'm not trying to say that people don't really need Paxil, Prozac, Zoloft, and Lexapro and whatever, but I am saying there's a lot of people on those medicines that don't need to be on those medicines if they were to just take a more functional medicine approach to their health problems, and fix the gut. I was telling another doctor the other day that gut to this day is probably my biggest nemesis. It's a very simplistic yet difficult organ, the GI system. We're still learning. We don't have the gut figured out by any means. And one of the infuriating things for me as a learner is when you go out and you take a course and you listen to one person talk for 4 hours, and then you listen to somebody else and they basically say the 180 of everything that expert just said. And then you're left. And what I've learned is you just have to take bits and pieces and patch it together for yourself on what works for you and your patients. But there's so many great things you can do today for the gut that are easy, even over the counter. But one of the things, like when I always tell patients, trying to lower gluten in their diet, trying to lower dairy in their diet, trying to take out artificial sweeteners out of their diet, trying to hydrate better, trying to lower stress. So yeah, it seems like such a simple thing when you're like, hey, Steve, avoid artificial sweeteners. But I don't think most people understand why we say that. They're just like, oh, well, it's not natural, so he doesn't like it. But there's real reasons metabolically why we don't want it. Oxidative stress being one of those things, and inflammation, poor gut health, the neurotoxic effects that it has on the brain. We can go on and on. But again, if they get nothing else other than artificial sweeteners are bad, good job. I agree. That's a good place to start.
Okay, so we're clear on that point. So our other two options are natural sugar and then alternatives. So let's talk about why natural sugars you might need to reconsider it, and how you could avoid maybe whatever disadvantages you've been trying to avoid.
So, one of the thoughts that I've had patients tell me a lot is I must have sugar. My body must have sugar. No, bullshit. It doesn't. We make our own sugar in our liver. We convert things. We don't have to have sugar. Actually, true hypoglycemia is a very rare condition. Very, very few people actually. They'll be like, oh, my sugar drops. And actually what I say about that is because you ate a donut, okay? You shot your sugar up, your insulin secreted properly, your sugar dropped. It gave you that sensation. So it gave you a craving to go eat another donut. It wasn't if we just sat there and stuck your finger, you never got near hypoglycemia. It's a feeling because of your bad diet. Okay. Like I always say, what's the dangers of eating a donut? Well, shoot your sugar up, shoot your insulin up, sugar drops. Brain says, hypoglycemia, because of this big difference, still very much in normal range at the bottom side of that, probably 80, 90, 100. But they're in there munching on another donut because their brain told them to. Plus, they taste good, right? So that's why we go back. Again, those addictive properties. Sugar is a very addictive substance. So this thought that we have to have sugar is not true. So then can we have sugar? Sure. We just don't want excessive amounts. And saying I'm going to avoid sugar is a very difficult proposition, okay? First of all, foods have natural sugars in them, and fruits and carbs and things like that. So I don't think we have to completely avoid sugar, but what we want to do is just prevent sugar overload. It's what starts this whole domino effect of insulin resistance, diabetes, weight gain, yada, yada, that you and I have talked about ad nauseum, and we'll continue to talk about ad nauseum because it's that important. So I just always try to tell patients that if anybody knows me well, I'm not a big diet advocator. In other words, I don't say, hey, Steve, I need you to do Mediterranean diet, or hey, Steve, I need you to do Atkins diet, keto diet. I think everybody's diet is different and need to adapt to what your likes and dislikes are. As we've talked about, you could tell me today I must eat broccoli and I'm going to starve to death because I hate broccoli. I don't like the way it smells, tastes, texture, nothing. I know it's good for me, but doesn't matter. My brain says yuck. And so if you prescribe me a broccoli and chicken diet, well, I'll eat the chicken, but I ain't eating the broccoli. So we must adapt to our own likes and dislikes. My wife, she could eat anything. I swear she'd eat a tire if you cooked it. She just will eat anything. I won't. I'm picky. So we have to work around that. But if we can just learn what's good and what's bad in quantities, I like to say most foods are okay as long as they're in decent quantities, minus aspartame. Okay. We're going to put that over in that category. Doesn't matter the quantity. So just trying to help patients eat a little bit better, but working through that. So you'll get that natural sugar in your diet. Fruits. Let's talk about fruits for a second. Patients, we've deemed fruit to be healthy, right? Not us, not you and me, but the government has deemed fruits to be healthy. Patients believe, like, I can't tell how many times I see somebody post on Facebook and it just, what do the kids say? SMH. You're just shaking my head because they'll show how they're eating healthy today, and it's this gargantuan bowl of tropical fruits. And I'm like, might as well just had a candy bar, I mean, seriously, like, I'd rather you had a burger, honestly. Protein in there, some good, maybe a little bit of good fats in there along with the bad fats. It's all sugar. That's what fruit is. So you can minimize that by eating better. But I don't advocate ever, I just always advocate trying to keep sugar as low in the diet as possible. But there is a food product that I love, and it's very, very rarely spoken of, and it's called trehalose. And it's spelled TREHALOSE. It's a disaccharide. It's a natural sugar. You can find it on Amazon. It's not quite to taste as sweet as sugar. I usually tell patients if you're going to bake with it, you typically want to do a ×2 conversion. So, half a cup of sugar would be 1 cup of trehalose. But trehalose is actually good for us. It actually helps cellular metabolism. It actually, get this, is good for the gut. It actually tightens up those junctions in our gut so we're not as leaky. It is actually a food product that I would advocate you could have with every meal. If you like a little bit of a sweet coffee in the morning, put you a couple of teaspoons of trehalose in your coffee. If if you're baking desserts, cook with trehalose. So this is an amazingly healthy disaccharide sugar because of it's been shown in studies now to have some anti-cancer effects. So it's an anti-inflammatory. So again, there's it's just one of those food products that doesn't get a lot of spotlight. I'm going to throw out there my $1 billion product that if somebody does, they need to at least send me a 24-pack for free, is creating a diet drink with trehalose. Because trehalose is actually good for us. It's something that, I was told about by one of my mentors a few years ago. And as we've looked into it, we really, really like. So those patients out there that just have a sweet tooth, need some sugar in their diet, trehalose can be extremely healthy. Actually, I would take it a step further. Put it in your diet just because of how good it is for you. So even if you don't have a sweet tooth, you're like, I kind of like the taste of it in my coffee, but I can drink my coffee black. It's a good thing to add into your diet. So trehalose, super inexpensive too. Easy to find on Amazon. Easy to use. They're even now coming out with trehalose shampoos and trehalose makeups and all of these things. I don't know if that does anything, to be real honest with you. I don't know if topically it has any effects. I can see where it might with its anti-inflammatory effects, but that's how popular trehalose is becoming.
Well, let's talk about the other alternatives. Let's weigh in on like stevia, monk fruit, allulose. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm cool with those. The biggest thing is they don't have as much data behind them, but the biggest thing you're going to find with those is they have a pretty pungent aftertaste. And I think that anybody that uses those is going to be like, you got to be real careful with how much you use of it, because man, like me personally, I don't like stevia at all. Like I got really excited when they made these stevia sodas. I was like, oh man, it's going to taste like Coke and it's going to be really good. And then you taste it, and it's like, oh my God, this stuff is horrible. Actually, they made the green label Coke. Do you remember this? It was couple years ago they made this green label Coke. maybe it was like Coke Life or something like that. I can't remember the name, but they still had to put sugar in it to try to cover up the stevia taste because stevia has such an aftertaste to it. So I do like the stevias and the monk fruits better. Um, those are natural alternatives. I think anytime you get natural, that's better. I would just say that I would be much more in favor of trehalose than I would those products. There's some decent data out there with stevia, maybe showing some anti-cancer characteristics and some insulin resistance positive effects. I just don't know that there's enough data for me to go along with it. So if a person's like not going to do trehalose, going to definitely do some form of a sweetener alternative, I would say your stevias and monk fruit would definitely be the alternative that I would choose, but trehalose would be the absolute one I'd prefer. And these days trehalose is easy to get on Amazon and as inexpensive as those products. So that's always going to be the way I go with the sweeteners.
As Americans, I don't know why, but when I travel, so go to Mexico and you're checking in and they have this water that's sitting over there and they just put fruit in it.
Yeah.
And it's delicious.
Yeah.
And then I watch on YouTube, I watch this family in Azerbaijan and they have this beautiful farm and she just cooks all this great stuff. But while she's cooking, he's doing the farm chores. But one of his responsibilities is he goes and picks flowers, whatever's blooming, and he puts it in a pot and pours boiling water on it. And that's their tea. And I'm going, wow, I would have never thought of that. Growing up as an American, we only trust what comes out of a stupid box on a shelf in a supermarket. And we're oblivious to all this stuff that's good for you that's just laying around.
Sure. I mean, and so many of the products that we use now, that's where it's come from, right? It's come from leaves and bark and things like that we know work. The Native Americans didn't have it wrong when they found all these different things that they treated different conditions with. So yeah, totally agree. I mean, those are natural way of cooking is the great. And could you imagine how good all that food tastes as well, being that natural? So yeah, just trying to get the artificial sweeteners out, trying to limit it. Maybe a little bit more trehalose in your diet would be a really good, easy thing to do. In addition to all those other things that we advocate for trying to get healthy, it's just another little small step, little small piece of the puzzle to getting the best health that we can, the best metabolism, cellular efficiency that we can.
All right. It's another conversation about making commitments to improving your lifestyle. This is, the thing about working with Dr. Kris is this is not the typical doctor relationship. Hey, doctor, give me a pill I take once a day that fixes everything, please. No, you have to take ownership of your part in your health journey. And these are commitments. These are you need to see yourself different, that you can actually avoid drinking 4 Diet Dr. Peppers a day. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with making that commitment. Dr. Pepper is going to be fine.
Yeah, you're not going to hurt their stocks. It's like the piggybacking off of that. There's so many little things that we help our patients do that are small little sacrifices that at the end of the day, in 2 weeks, a month, or 2 months, 6 months, you're not even going to miss. And you'll feel better and you'll be like, why was I doing that? It's like, there's just certain things in health that you just can't fight, like giving up cigarettes, giving up tobacco, giving up sodas, exercising a little bit. It's amazing actually what you can do with just hydration, giving up certain foods, sodas, sugar, sweeteners, and then getting a good night's rest. I think we may have talked about this on a couple podcasts ago, but one of my great friends, great physician out in California, Juan Batista, he said, let's not forget all the cool stuff that I prescribe, that it all starts with the food that we put in our mouth. If you have a very good, well-rounded, low inflammatory diet, it's amazing how good those patients naturally feel. Everything else after that is pretty easy. It's just sometimes getting patients to that point to whether they're ready to do that. But if you ever hit rock bottom hard enough, you'll be ready to embrace a lot of these things. So some patients, we talk to them and we say, you know what, you're not ready today. That's fine. you'll probably, unfortunately, will be ready at some point. And when you are, come back. So to each their own. And we just try to help everybody the best we can.
All right. And speaking of that, how can someone connect with you? Should they like, all right, I'm ready to make a difference. I want to take ownership, but I'd like to work with someone that understands me and can lead me on this way.
3 ways. So, of course, you can just stop in if you're a local patient or local potential patient. Stop in, and the young ladies will be more than happy to talk to you and explain what we do. You can go to theresearchclinic.com, hit the consultation button, option 2. Option 3 is just give us a call. You'll see our phone number on everything, and or just Google us, and you'll find us, and just come see us.
All right, that's theresearchclinic.com. All right, I'm going to roll out our outro. Here we go. Thanks for joining the Dr. Kris Podcast. If you learned something today and you want to connect and get more information, visit our website, www.drkris.life, where you can find more great information or even schedule a time to learn how you can engage with Dr. Kris. Be sure to follow, like, share, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Dr. Kris Podcast. Well, I'm going to have a smoothie for lunch with a fruit in it. Even though it's natural sugar, I'm going to do it, Dr. Kris. But I'm going to put some raw milk in it. So there's my protein and fat.
All right. And just remember, there's a study that came out that you don't want to mix bananas and berries. They kind of counteract each other. So if you're going to have berries, have berries. You're going to have a banana, but don't mix them. It actually counteracts each other. You lose all the positive stuff. So
there you go.
A little tip.
All these things. And then we'll read an article next week on you if you're not mixing bananas and berries. All right. We'll see you. Take care. Good job.
All right.